Imagine a typical weekday morning. A yellow school bus pulls up in front of a quiet suburban street. Backpacks swing over shoulders. Lockers slam shut down a long hallway. Inside a classroom, a teacher hands back graded papers. Some students glance quickly. Some look nervous. And a few names always appear at the top of the page. The students who finish their assignments early. The ones teachers trust to lead group projects. The ones parents quietly point to and say, they're going to do just fine. For years, the path seems clear. Study hard. Get good grades. Graduate. Build a stable life. And for a long time, the evidence seems to support that belief. Report cards filled with A's. Honor roll announcements. Scholarships pinned proudly on family refrigerators. At graduation ceremonies, cameras flash as caps fly into the air. Friends hug. Parents wipe away quiet tears. In that moment, the future feels almost predictable. But then something curious begins to happen. Not all at once, not like a dramatic turning point. More like a slow shift. Years later, some of those same students, the ones everyone believed would be fine, begin to feel something unexpected. Not failure, not disaster, just uncertainty. They followed the path exactly as it was laid out, and yet the next step suddenly feels unclear. So what changed? To understand that question, we have to look at the world these students stepped into after the classroom lights turned off. Across much of the English-speaking world, millions of people grow up inside a very similar rhythm. High school hallways lined with lockers. Football games under bright stadium lights. Late nights studying for exams that seem incredibly important at the time. Then comes the next chapter. University campuses with wide green lawns. Lecture halls filled with laptops and notebooks. Coffee shops where students quietly work on essays and group projects. For many people, these years carry a quiet promise. If you work hard enough, if you stay disciplined enough, life after graduation will start to make sense. And in some ways, that expectation once matched the world people were entering. There was a time when the transition from school to career felt more predictable. Graduate. Find a job. Build experience year by year. But over the last few decades, the landscape around young adults has slowly changed. Industries evolve faster. Careers shift in unexpected directions. New opportunities appear, while older ones quietly fade. Many people still follow the same educational path their parents did, but the environment waiting outside the classroom is no longer exactly the same. And that change can create a strange feeling for people who spent years mastering the rules of school, because the rules outside school often look very different. And that difference begins with something surprisingly simple: structure, and what happens when it suddenly disappears. In school life, moves with a rhythm so familiar that most people barely notice it. Monday morning classes, assignments due on Friday, midterms in October, final exams in December. There is always a next step. If you ask a student what they should be doing tonight, the answer is usually obvious. Finish the homework, study for the test, prepare the presentation. The structure is already there. Someone designed it. Teachers decide the curriculum. Schools set the schedule. Deadlines appear automatically. And when you follow that structure well, the results are easy to recognize. A higher grade, a better score. But after graduation, something subtle changes. The structure fades. There is no syllabus for the next 10 years of your life. No professor sending reminders. No clear chapter to study next. Instead, the questions become much wider. What kind of work should you explore? What skills should you focus on? Where should you spend your time and energy? For the first time, the map is no longer printed in advance, and that freedom, while exciting, can also feel surprisingly disorienting. Many people remember moments like this, sitting alone at a kitchen table after work, scrolling through job descriptions that all sound vaguely similar, wondering which direction actually makes sense. Not because they lack ability, but because the environment has changed. The rules that guided the first 20 years of life are suddenly less visible, and when that happens, something else becomes noticeable too. In school, effort and results tend to move closely together. Study harder, and your score improves. But outside the classroom, that relationship begins to look very different. In school, the relationship between effort and results usually feels straightforward. If you spend more time studying, your score often improves. The feedback is clear. You submit an assignment, and a few days later, the result appears. A grade, a comment. Many people grow up trusting this pattern. Work hard, improve steadily, see progress. But after graduation, the rhythm changes. Imagine someone sending out their first round of job applications. They spend hours polishing a resume, double-checking every sentence, making sure everything looks right. Then they press submit, and after that, nothing happens for a while. Days pass, sometimes weeks. No immediate response. Or imagine someone starting their first job. They arrive early. They take careful notes. They try to do everything right. But in the early months, it can still feel unclear whether they are moving forward. Not because their effort is wasted, but because the timeline of feedback has changed. In many areas of adult life, progress takes longer to reveal itself. Skills grow quietly. Opportunities appear unpredictably. Sometimes the results of effort only become visible much later. And this delay can feel confusing for people who are used to the faster feedback loop of school. It is not unusual to hear someone say, "I'm working hard, but I'm not sure if I'm doing the right things." Or, "I thought life would feel clearer by now." These feelings are surprisingly common, because outside the classroom, the connection between effort and outcome becomes less immediate. And when that happens, another shift slowly begins to reveal itself. A shift that has less to do with how much someone knows, and more to do with how value is created in the real world. In school, knowledge is usually easy to measure. You read the material, you understand the concepts, you answer the questions correctly, and when you do that well, the result appears clearly. A higher score, a better grade. But outside the classroom, the question begins to change. It is no longer only about what someone knows. Instead, the world quietly asks a different question. What value can that knowledge create?
If we look at the data here, the growth
Imagine
metrics clearly
two different
outperform the previous
situations.
quarter's forecast.
In one, a student sits in a lecture hall taking careful notes about marketing theories. They understand every concept. They remember the definitions. In another situation, a small business owner experiments with ways to attract customers. Some ideas work, others do not. Over time, they learn what connects with people. Both are learning, but the way their knowledge becomes useful looks different. One environment rewards correct answers, the other rewards useful outcomes. This difference appears in many parts of adult life. A software engineer may study programming concepts for years, but in practice, the question becomes whether that knowledge helps solve real problems. A designer may study visual theory, but success often depends on whether the design helps people understand something more clearly. Knowledge remains valuable, but outside school, it becomes only the starting point. What matters next is how that knowledge connects to real situations and real people. And that connection rarely happens alone. Because in adult life, progress often involves something classrooms measure less directly: other people. In school, most progress happens individually. You sit at your desk, you complete the assignment. When the results arrive, they belong mostly to you, your score, your grade. After graduation, something subtle begins to change. Many opportunities begin to travel through relationships. A colleague mentions an interesting project. A former classmate shares information about a new role. A conversation over coffee leads to a collaboration. These moments may seem small at first, but over time, they shape many professional paths. People remember them years later. A manager who offered guidance during a first job. A friend who encouraged them to explore a new opportunity. a coworker who shared a skill that later became extremely useful. None of these moments appear on a transcript, yet they quietly influence how people grow. Progress in adult life often becomes less like a straight line and more like a network. Ideas move between people. Skills grow through collaboration. Opportunities appear through conversations. And alongside these changes, another shift enters the picture. The everyday rhythm of adult life. While people are in school, most of their attention focuses on learning. Assignments, exams, projects. Life is organized around academic milestones. After graduation, daily life begins to include many other responsibilities. Housing arrangements, transportation to work, groceries, schedules, routines. None of these things are dramatic. They are simply part of ordinary life. But together they create a different rhythm. A typical weekday might include commuting across the city, learning new systems at work, returning home in the evening with limited energy, cooking dinner, tidying the apartment, preparing for the next day. Life becomes fuller, and as responsibilities expand, personal growth often becomes harder to see. In school, progress is visible. You finish a semester, you complete a course. In adult life, growth unfolds more quietly. Learning how to manage time, learning how to communicate clearly,
growth here.
learning how to adapt when plans change.
A clear idea for the next quarter.
These abilities grow slowly. Sometimes so slowly that people barely notice them. Until one day they realize they are not the same person they were a few years earlier. And as people reflect on these changes, another insight often appears. The system
Q3
that shapes
projections are
success
looking
in
great.
school and the system that
implement this
shapes success in
strategy
adult
immediately,
life
we'll hit the target.
operate differently. In school, the goals are clear. Study the material, complete the assignment, pass the exam. In adult life, the questions are broader. How do you approach unfamiliar situations? How do you adapt when there is no clear template? Many challenges arrive without step-by-step instructions. Projects with no obvious solution. Responsibilities that evolve over time.
But what about
In
the
these
timeline?
moments, new abilities begin to develop. Observation, adaptation, learning from subtle feedback. Gradually, people begin to see that success in life rarely follows a single correct path. Instead, it often involves discovering which paths fit a person's abilities, interests, and circumstances. And once people begin to see life this way, another realization often follows. The years that once felt uncertain may begin to look different. Think about how many people describe their 20s, moving to a new city for the first time, living in a small apartment, trying to understand a new workplace culture, changing directions more than once. At the time, these experiences can feel messy. Plans change, timelines stretch, but many people later look back and realize those years were not empty. They were formative. The first time someone learns to navigate uncertainty. The first time someone discovers what kind of work truly interests them. The first time someone shapes their own routines. These moments rarely come with certificates, but they quietly build perspective and resilience. And when viewed from a distance, the early years after school often look less like a period of being lost, and more like the middle of a longer story. When people first leave school, they often expect life to feel like a continuation of the same path. Another level, another set of tests. But adult life rarely moves that way. Instead of a straight staircase, it often looks like a series of small turns. A conversation that leads to a new opportunity. A project that reveals an unexpected interest. A skill that becomes useful years later. From the outside, these moments appear ordinary. Yet when people look back, they often realize these were the moments that shaped their direction. Not dramatic turning points, just small adjustments repeated over time. In school, direction is provided. In life, direction slowly emerges. Through experience, through relationships, through curiosity about what might come next. And for many of the students who once sat in those quiet classrooms believing the future was already mapped out, the real journey only began after the map disappeared.